Welcome to the Divine Renovation podcast. Divine Renovation is a Catholic ministry dedicated to parish renewal. We provide coaching and tools to help parishes escape maintenance mode, reclaim their purpose, and get back on track for mission. On today's podcast, Divine Renovation founder Father James Mallon shares highlights from the year, and Dan gets schooled in Advent trivia. Then New Zealand relationship guide Cheryl Surrey talks renewal in her region, and DR leadership coach Matt Regitz shares stories from the trenches. Stay tuned for a jam-packed Season 8 finale.
Hello and welcome to the Divine Renovation podcast, where we get to share stories of what God is doing in His church around the world as people are transformed by the love of Jesus. So I'm the storyteller here at Divine Renovation, and today we are doing a very special Christmas episode. So not only is DR President Dan O'Rourke with us, but founder of Divine Renovation and pastor of Our Lady of Guadelupe, Father James Mallon is joining us as well today. Hello.
Hello, Jacqueline.
The way she said your name made me feel like I should applaud. Father James Mallon, and he runs into the room. Fireworks go off. I'll say though, her introduction to me didn't have quite as much fanfare. I don't know.
And Dan O'Rourke.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
So, Dan, you and I have been doing this together now for a whole season. But Father James, you used to do this nonstop. You were the podcast. So welcome back to your chair that I have not filled.
The very first podcast we did was in my office shortly before DR 16, and we got some mics and we just kind of went for it. We had a topic, and then we moved from my office to the parish showers. We tore out the showers and turned a shower. We knocked down the wall and turned it into a little audio studio, which was fantastic.
Gosh.
So we did a couple of seasons of podcasting.
Yep. We'd all jam into what was formerly the showers.
And people tell me they still go back and listen to that stuff.
Yeah, the old podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
The old podcast. And then we started, when we had the studio, we started doing the video stuff. So we used to do this every week.
Yeah, it was good fun.
I love
Jacqueline. It's still good fun.
It
Although I
used to
do
be
miss
good
Father
fun.
James being part of it. Yeah, it used to be good fun. No, but, I do miss Father James you being on it. It was a lot of fun. We had good fun back in the day doing it, and so while it's still fun, Jacqueline, it's great to have Father James back in his seat.
I totally agree, especially for this Christmas episode, because I wanted to start by asking you guys. Well, Father James, we'll start with you. What is your favorite liturgy over the whole Advent and Christmas season? What is one that you're like, oh, I always look forward to this?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've got a lot of liturgies through this season, but Advent is my most favorite season of the year. I don't know why that is, but there's something about hearing "O come, Emmanuel," or "O come, Divine Messiah." Maybe it's because it brings me back to when I was young, but there's something about Advent that maybe the newness of it, I'm not sure, but it's my favorite season, and I love that season of preparation. I tend to be a bit of an Advent fundamentalist as much as possible. Like I refuse to have some authority over this ministry. Still, our social is called the Advent social. It's not a Christmas social.
I would just like to point out for listeners who that aren't choosing to watch the video version, Dan is shaking his head the whole time.
See, it's we've got to live. Liturgy can't be confined to the sanctuary of a church. It's got to be breathed. It's got to be lived. So we got to, the whole point of Advent is it's not yet. You're supposed to hold it back. It drives me crazy. You get the 12 days of Christmas, and people are so sick of Christmas by the second day they take their trees down. Anyway, so I love Advent, and so I like to try to impose it on others.
Yes, I think that's the right choice. What about you, Dan?
And by the way, I do like your Advent themed jacket. It's very nice.
Thank you.
Yes, you are dressed for the season. Look, I love Advent. I also love Christmas, and unlike Father James, at least in my private time, I celebrate them simultaneously. I know the difference. I don't let it get in the way of my joy. So I love both the season, but also I'll say this though, and I will give you absolute credit, and you and I couldn't agree more on this. Like, "O come, Emmanuel," those anticipatory songs are particularly beautiful in this season. Now, I will also listen to all sorts of other songs, which I would get are liturgically not aligned.
I mean, I'll get into it like usually a couple of days before, like December 22nd, I might start listening to Frosty the Snowman or something, but it's, I'll play Handel's Messiah.
Yeah, see, I got little kids, man. We got Frosty on the TV long before then, right? Like it's part of the, the kids get into the season, and so they don't play a lot of O Come Emmanuel on Frosty the Snowman.
I think of it so much like gestation. And I don't know theologically if that's a sound, but that's what we're talking about, because we're talking about longing that leads to a new birth.
Yes.
And as a mom, while the seasons are different, you are a mother in both, right? Like pregnancy, you have already become a mother. And so you live in the richness of that while you are still in the longing and the expectation of the birth.
Absolutely. You nailed it. You nailed it. And so, but we don't like to wait. We live in a culture of instant gratification, and the whole point of Advent is wait for it.
I love it.
So, and then here's the thing: this is what I love. One of the things I love about our Catholic faith. The Church says wait, but then when it arrives, you get we get the 12 days of Christmas. Yeah. But we've got the octave of Christmas. Like, you're supposed to party for 8 days straight.
I love it. I'm a big fan of the party.
Then you get to party big time. So it's, I think it's only when we do Advent well that we really do Christmas well.
Jacqueline, you and I are going to go over to Father James's place on the 26th. And we're going to be watching Frosty with him. And
I would love that. I would love that. So I do want to jump right into looking back now. As much as we're looking forward in Advent, I want to look back over the past year. So in 2023, Father James, I'll start with you. Could you sum up like a couple highlights of this year for you, both as a pastor and then also within Divine Renovation?
Wow. Yeah, there's been so much. The one thing is being back in a parish. I was talking to someone yesterday about how essential that is, and how during the 3 years when I was outside of parish ministry, working in the diocese and working with Divine Renovation, there was a point where I just knew I need to get back in for the sake of fulfilling the deepest call that's in my heart, and for the sake of credibility to the ministry. So as many of you know, I've been back in Our Lady of Guadelupe. This is where we're in the foyer right now. You can see the sanctuary. Yes, it is a round church, and we're about 3.5 years. We're coming up to 3.5 years that I've been pastor. I took over during the pandemic after a merger of 5 communities. It's been the biggest challenge of my life. It's been incredibly difficult. And you used an analogy of gestation and giving birth and motherhood. Maybe I can continue that metaphor. And it's a biblical metaphor. St. Paul talks about it. Jesus used this image of the joy of a mother who gives birth. And when she holds that child, then the labor pains are forgotten. And I think, leading a parish from maintenance to mission, from being inward focused and serving its own members to being outward focused and reaching others, that transformation has labor pains. It's painful. It is painful, but they can become a distant memory. And when I was pastor at St. Benedict, we had moved really into a missional zone that I remembered the pain, but the memories of pain, the more distant they are, the less severe the memories.
Yes.
So I've been re-immersed. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot how painful it is. It is painful. I like to say to people, a divine renovation, bringing pastoral conversion to your parish, which is what we mean by divine renovation, is like renovating your home. Anyone out there who's ever renovated their home, 2 things. It's going to cost you more than you thought, and it's going to take much longer than you thought. And that's the same with pastoral conversion. So being back in, it's been a heck of a journey. It's been painful, but if I can just say, one of my greatest joys as a pastor is when you begin to move out of what I call a phase 1 of parish renewal. Phase 1, every dynamic entity has momentum, and most parishes are not in maintenance; they're in decline, which means they're moving with momentum in the wrong direction. And phase 1 is really when you you stop it moving in the wrong direction and slowly get it to start moving in the right direction. That can take 2 to 4 years.
Yeah.
It takes a long time, but we're starting to move in the right direction, and you can feel it. It's like watching, I don't know if anyone's ever sat and watched a pot boil. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but when you start seeing those bubbles coming up and you start seeing people, in a sense, awakening to vision, getting engaged, getting involved, you feel a difference on Sunday mornings. It's beginning to happen, and it's incredibly exciting. And I experience it right here at the altar on weekends now as we gather the community of faith. So that's where we are right now in the parish, and it's absolutely amazing. On the ministry side, I'm doing a little bit of traveling and not as much, of course, as I used to, but one of my most recent trips was just 2 weeks ago. I was invited to speak at a conference in Rome at the Vatican. And so that was a little nerve-wracking to be I was in the Paul VI Hall talking to 2,500 people, and I was asked to speak about divine renovation and our vision for 2030. And so I gave
2033.
Oh, sorry, 2033. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We don't have a vision for 2030.
I just threw that out there to see if he was paying attention.
He was. He nailed it.
So I gave a little bit about the ministry, the 3 keys, as you can see on my coffee mug here, and our model, and started with the reflection that some of you may have heard me speak about the paralytic that was brought to Jesus, which time and time again I go back to it, and as such a key reflection. I think of those 4 unnamed persons who brought the paralyzed man to Jesus, that they had a desire to bring him to Jesus. Here's the thing, like, desire is so key, isn't it? Like, if you think of your own particular church right now, whether or not you're actually evangelizing or doing mission is one question, but a much deeper question is, do you even desire it? If there's no desire, that's a deeper problem. But the desire, you can build upon desire. So where is our level of desire? They desired to bring this man to Jesus, but not just to Jesus, to his feet. It wasn't enough for them to bring him to the edge of the crowd. They wanted to bring him to the feet of Jesus. They had a conviction that would make the difference. And that's so important as well, to be truly convicted that it matters that we bring people to the feet of Jesus. So often in the church, we settle for good enough. We bring people to the edge of the crowd, good enough. We had 25 confirmations, good enough. And the third thing was the willingness to do whatever it takes. And they dug through Peter's roof. I mean, that's the last roof in Capernaum that I would dig through. But anyway, Peter, I imagine Peter as being like big muscles and all this.
Yes, fisherman.
Like us,
they tore through his roof. They were willing to do it. And I think those are critical questions for every parish to ask. So that's some of the reflections that I gave, and talked a little bit about the 2033 vision. It was well received. In addition to the talk, I got to meet the Holy Father. Well, me and like hundreds of others, and got to meet some amazing people. So it was a really good experience.
Yeah, super exciting for us to hear too in the ministry. Like, that's such an encouragement. Dan, I should have made you go first, because did you meet a lot with the Pope this year? Actually, you might have. So you tell me, like, what is your highlights this year in the ministry? Because you have been all over the place this year. You are quite the globetrotter.
Look, I think internally sometimes we talk about the 4 Ps, and so that's the person, the priest, the parish, the planet, and the various places that divine renovation is both called to serve and to do our work in the field. And if I'm honest, I think this past year I've been so grateful, and in part I owe it to you, Jacqueline, is the stories of people. Like, if you start at the person, the person who didn't know Jesus, who came to know Jesus through one of these incredible parishes. I have been so personally blessed by hearing the stories of so many who needed Jesus in their lives, didn't have him, and thanks be to God, through encountering a parish and a parish that was ready to receive them or invite them, that they were able to encounter him, and their life was completely transformed. And, on occasion I get to share some of those stories, and for me, it's just a tremendous blessing to be able to share those things. So I think when I look at you, Jacqueline, I'm like, man, like, the power of these stories, the power of you as our storyteller, and gathering some of these stories, these are the things that transform, right? It's the testimony. It's the testimony of lives transformed. And so we get to do that with people who aren't in relationship with Jesus, who come to know him. Also, the priests, the amazing journey that so many priests have been on in the past year, and getting to meet with so many of them in all sorts of different places. It's just been a real privilege, and visit so many parishes. And the final P is the planet. And it's funny because you were talking about your time, Father James, at speaking at St. Paul VI Hall, on that recent trip. And I can't remember, I think I was in the Netherlands at the time, and I had two different people who were WhatsApping me photos of you from the stage while you were there. And for me, it was, first, I was so encouraged by the fact that you were there, that you had this privilege to be able to share and speak in that way. But just also this amazing network of leaders from around the world who are connected in this way. Like,
Yeah.
a handful of years ago, this kind of thing, there wouldn't have been anybody in the room I would have known other than Father James Mallon. But now I see that you've got all these incredible leaders who all have a heart for mission, all have a heart for renewal, and are just cheering each other on. And that's how I experienced the moment. While I couldn't be with you there, I was so gratified in terms of recognizing that there are so many who are connected to this ministry or through this ministry to one another, that, it is truly a global ministry that we get to serve in, and it's just a real privilege.
Yeah, I love it. I love too when you're talking about the power of story, because that's the privilege I get, where I often say that I'm cheating, because you guys are out there working in the trenches, in the fields, and there's this sense of fruit coming in, and I just am given a basket and told, go collect the fruit that I did not plant, but I get to just go and scoop it all up and then pass it on so that others are hearing it. And it's got to be in Revelation, that verse, the blood of the Lamb and the power of their testimonies, like
of their testimony, yeah.
Yeah, like the stories have always meant to change people, because it's that whole idea, right, of like God spoke and it was. What is Jesus? He's the Word. So should we be shocked that the stories of the truth then change people? Like, that's how it was set up. It's like the fabric. There's a quote, I think it's Muriel Rutsacker or somebody, that said the world is not made of atoms but of stories. And I love that, like, deeper spiritual side of, like.
But if we don't have stories, let's pack up and go home. I once heard someone say that consumers have preferences, but missionaries or disciples have stories. If you're a missionary disciple, you're going to be telling stories. You're not going to be talking about your preferences. You're going to be talking about your stories.
Yes.
You're going to be excited by stories. You're going to be your imagination is going to be enlarged by storytelling.
And that we all have them. Like, that's something that I would really hope that listeners would be encouraged by, is that, like, every listener, you have a story, you are a story, and you hear them and you pass them on. And we all become part of this big fabric, instead of it just being about, in our cultures, especially in the Western world that are so focused on fame, there's this sense of prioritization of stories based on fame, or on who's important enough for their story to matter. And what Jesus shows us over and over and in the Gospels is, like, the person that you're ignoring is the person whose story is going to change the world. That's the one, like, look what happens here.
And it's the same thing at the parish level. When you tell stories in every culture, in ancient cultures down to our own time, it's when you formulate a story, it's a form of celebration, isn't it?
Yeah.
What you celebrate creates and shapes the culture.
Yeah.
So telling stories is a key. Stories of transformation, of people encountering the Lord and becoming disciples, that will help to shape the culture of a parish. But, we sometimes have to be very careful that we don't just glamorize or tell one kind of story. The person
that's right.
The atheist who had the big conversion. There's also the person who always had faith and gradually grew in their faith and took courageous steps. There's all kinds of faith journeys, and all the stories matter. We need to tell all of those stories because they're all going to speak to different people.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
My wife's like that, right? Like, so Laura, always had a relationship with Jesus. Like, when did you experience the power of Jesus? When was your conversion? She's like, I was raised Christian, I was never away. I was always thus. But her story is profound and powerful in and of itself. And it's not I mean, I suppose in some ways all of our stories are unique, but it's thematic to so many others that we would find in our parishes. And I think you're absolutely right, Father James. It's like, we ought not just look for the stories of that would make a great movie.
Yeah.
Some of the stories are so normal that the beauty is so rich in them.
Yeah. Okay, so I could sit here for the next 40 hours and just talk about story. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to play a little game because we're talking about celebrating. And so let's celebrate and have a little bit like it's a Christmas party, like it's an Advent party. We're going to play trivia between the two of you. This is how it's going to work. If you have the right answer, you're going to make a noise like buzz or beep or moo or whatever makes a buzzer to you. And then I will pick who said it first. And my wonderful in the background producers are going to tell me who won because I'm not going to keep track of points. So if somebody could tell me. And here we go. So question 1. They start easy and they get harder. What is the liturgical color of Advent?
Beep.
I was just going to answer.
You just rolled your eyes, Dan. That's not a beep.
Well, I was going to just answer, but I'm like, right, I'm supposed to make a noise. Okay, yeah.
Okay, Father James made the noise. Go ahead, Father James.
Purple.
Yes, love it.
I actually started pointing at you, Jacqueline, because you're wearing your red. See, you saw my hand go up.
Yes. And you noticed that my eyeshadow was also purple to match my jacket. So I appreciate that. No, you didn't, but I'm just pointing that out. Okay, question 2. What does the candle for the first week of Advent symbolize?
Beep.
Yes, Father James?
Hope.
Yes. Dan, it's okay. The eye rolls are great. It's getting harder.
I was going to say the word again.
I've never heard a beep at a competition before.
Well, I should have given you guys like cowbells or something, but I didn't.
Just to be clear, Jacqueline, because you realize what you're doing to us. Father
Is
James
I'm making
and I
you
both have
compete.
competition in our top 10 strengths.
I did that on purpose. I literally was like Clifton Strength.
I'm down by 2 points and feeling increasingly uncomfortable.
I know, and competition is really low on mine because I just like people
Beep,
to get
I don't
along.
even know what the question is. Beep.
Okay, ready? Number 3. Saint Nick was the bishop of which diocese?
Oh.
And if you don't know the diocese, what was the ancient country? And if you don't know the ancient country, what would it be in modern geography?
Where are the questions about Frosty?
I have a good one for you. Don't worry. It's coming up, down.
I used to know.
I
this
actually
one.
have no idea about this one, Jack.
People, it was modern day Turkey, isn't it?
Yes, which is Lycia, isn't it? I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Is that ancient Lycia?
Lycia, yeah. I didn't know that was Anatolia used to be called, or Asia. The Roman province of Asia.
Beep. He didn't beep.
Yes.
So my answer is Lycia. Lycia.
I love it. Okay. Next question. We're almost to the final question, but before we do that, is everyone ready with their beeper? Who won F1 Grand Champion in the past year?
It was Nicholas of Myra.
Beep. No, it was Max Verstappen.
Saint Nicholas was from
Red Bull Racing.
Formula One racing.
I threw Formula One racing in just for Dad. Also because my son has.
You felt bad for it.
Yeah, but you are right. It was Myra. You're absolutely right.
Nicholas of Myra.
Yes, but Dan also has 1 point because Formula One racing has a lot to do with Advent. Okay, final question. As DR is currently coaching parishes in 28 countries worldwide, how many languages can you say Merry Christmas in? Beep for each individual language, and you'll get another point for each individual language. Go.
Beep.
Yes.
Joyeux Noël.
French.
Beep.
Yes.
Spanish. Feliz Navidad.
Now you're just singing the song.
Yeah, he totally was.
That's all I know.
Yeah, I got nothing other than English. Merry Christmas. Beep.
That's pretty lame.
I know. Look, how often do I find myself wishing people Merry Christmas? It's actually the one time I probably don't travel is around Christmas time.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
This is where I wish all of our staff would just appear because we would have, like a gazillion in our staff. We have German and Dutch and Spanish and so many different languages being spoken that would be amazing. But it does point out, we do wish everyone listening Merry Christmas. And if we could, in 28 different countries. We would be saying it in all the different languages. So before we wrap up here today, I want to thank both of you for spending time with me. Dan, you're going to continue to spend time with me. You're going to run over to your computer in your normal setup, and we're going to continue by chatting with one of our coaches and one of our regional guides to hear a little bit of what's happening there. But Father James, is there anything that you would want to share with our listeners, or just to say Merry Christmas to them before we let you go?
Well, I would just say, for all who are listening, thank you. Thank you for your heart that has an interest, a desire to see, obviously, the church and quite probably your church become a missionary church. Please pray for us. This is quite an adventure, and when you talk about missionary renewal, this is not just a psychological or sociological reality. This is spiritual conversion. It's a spiritual battle. So please pray for all of our team members and all of those pastors that are being coached throughout the world. And let's pray with expectant faith that the Lord will continue to provide much fruit for your story basket.
I love it. Well, happy Advent and soon to be Merry Christmas. And thank you guys both. Dan, I'll see you in a couple minutes. Hello and welcome to the podcast, Cheryl. We are very excited that you are here joining us on the DR podcast. I'd say from New Zealand, except for you're not in New Zealand today. Where are you coming to us from?
I am joining you from Scotland today, which is a bit of a change.
Despite the accent, you are our Kiwi Divine Renovation relationship guide. So I'm so excited that we've had on the podcast today, we've had Father James this morning, and Dan and I are also going to be interviewing Matt, one of our coaches. And so you're kind of bringing that vibe of what happens in our regions of our world. So I'm super excited about that.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. This is awesome. I'm very excited.
It's good to have you. It's kind of weird that you're not in New Zealand, even though, despite your accent, I still picture you as a Kiwi, as someone who lives, breathes, and spends most of their time in New Zealand. And that's where I think we've spent most of our time together when I've been on the road and traveling, and with you there. But look, I'm glad you're in your homeland of Scotland. I hope your accent doesn't get that much thicker, because it's tough enough already for this Canadian. But delighted that you're here, Cheryl, and for all that God's been doing through you. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here too, and I will try my best to speak as slowly as I can, because it has got a little bit thicker in the last 4 days of being. It's
gotten thicker as okay. So look, here's where I want us to start then, because this is important. Help me understand. In your family, do you have a favorite Christmas tradition?
Well, this Christmas is a little bit different because I haven't been home for Christmas in 12 years. So
oh my gosh.
Normally my Christmas experience is very, very different. And just in the last 4 days of being back in the cold with my kids, with my parents and my family, one tradition that's kind of been rising up for me was just walking the road, like walking the street and looking for Christmas decorations. Something that I used to do as a child, and I haven't done for a very long time, because in New Zealand, people have Christmas decorations, but it's not a thing as much as it is here. So I've been enjoying doing that the last few days with the kids. If we're driving along the road, I'll say, right, we're going to count the Christmas trees in the windows, and they're so excited about it. So I feel like I'm channeling a little bit of my younger self, going through these cold, wintry, dark nights with the kids.
I am over romanticizing Scotland, I think. But in my head, I'm like, I see everyone wearing like a red Christmas plaid, walking the streets like a Scottish Hallmark movie. It's very delightful in my head. Although I do appreciate that you mentioned the cold, just because normally, what would your temperatures be in New Zealand for this time? It's your summer, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we'd be in the mid-20s, I suppose. It'd be pretty warm, and it's been 2 to 4 degrees the last few days. So it's been nice, especially because I expected lots of rain, but it's been dry. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the cold for a change.
I love it. So I do want to ask a bit about the whole year. So that's a big ask. Looking back on your entire last year in New Zealand as the relationship guide, what are like the highlights that stand out to you, or or how would you summarize what this year has been in the ministry for you?
That's a great question. There's been lots of highlights, I think. We started off with a bang in February because we had our Australasia conference in Sydney, which was an amazing event. We'd never run a conference before, so to have a great experience and to get such great feedback. And I think from a Kiwi perspective, to have such a good representation from people coming from New Zealand, which isn't an easy or affordable thing to do. We had about 50 Kiwis with us. It was just a great weekend. And one of the highlights of that experience was probably we went on like a little cruise boat around Sydney Harbour with the Kiwis, and everybody just loved it. It was just so good to just come together and celebrate. And I think in particular celebrate what people were doing and what they're trying to do in their parishes. Another highlight would have probably been quasi bittersweet, which was when Father John Adams, who was parish priest of a parish in Christchurch, was chosen to be Bishop of Palmerston North. It was a very bittersweet moment for me and many of his leaders in his parish. Joyful that he was chosen for such an honour. Sad that he has to leave his parish behind, but there was this real excitement, I think, in many hearts that, you know, a priest that's really tried to do his best with DR, and we've accompanied him for a couple of years in coaching. The parish has seen such great fruit, and now he's going to be bishop of another diocese. That was probably a big highlight. And when we went to celebrate his ordination, it was always beautiful lay leaders coming together to celebrate, and it was like people from all over the country just coming just to give thanks to God for what he's done. That's probably been two of the main highlights, to be honest.
I love it. And we had Carly on a few episodes ago, Carly Mulqueen, and so she chatted a bit about that exact parish, but yeah, that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
Also, he's just such a lovely human being.
Yeah.
So what good news, you know?
Yeah, and just such beautiful fruit. Carly's amazing, and the things that they're seeing in their parish. I think, you know, I travel to Christchurch a lot for my work. So I'm based in Auckland. I'm in the North Island, and I was just telling my mum this morning about part of my job, and I says, you know, I have to go around the country quite a lot, and one of the highlights for me is just visiting Christchurch. It's like going up the mountaintop experience. It's a beautiful place to go and just experience the fervour, and just to walk alongside our priests that are there. It's just always such a nourishing and life-giving place to visit, because so many of the parishes are just on board for mission and renewal.
So Cheryl, look back on the year then, and like, are there any stories that stand out from this last year?
There's probably two stories that stand out most for me, Dan. One of them is a story from Christchurch Diocese. So Father Simon Eccleton, who I know you met when you were down in Christchurch.
Great guy.
I met him recently. We were having a coffee together, and he was telling me about how he has intentionally tried to drive planned giving. So inviting people in his parish to contribute financially as a commitment. So not just putting money in the plate if people still have money, but actually signing up to an automated payment that comes out of your bank account. And he's pushed it, I think, I don't want to get the numbers wrong, but 1 or 2 years he's chosen a Sunday, so one Sunday over the whole year. And he's just kind of crafted the language, crafted his homilies, crafted the messaging, and really tried to give the vision and the mission in a way that invites people into it. Instead of just saying, can you all just contribute? He's just done such a beautiful way of inviting people into that mission. And he was telling me that they've seen like nearly 20% increase in their financial giving in the parish. So much so that this year, because they don't have to do the same messaging for financials, they've decided to do an invitation on time and talent. So your time, your talent, and your treasure. So he's like, all right, treasure, awesome response. And he's really gave back to the parish and the parishioners to say thank you so much. And this year it's about time and talent. How can you give in other ways? And they've created documentation, they've got it on their website, and he's just on the money with that. Excuse the pun. So that's a great story. That is so exciting, because I think so many priests struggle with asking for donations. They struggle with tithing. And I think for Catholics, we do generally struggle to ask for that. But there's a way to do it. And when you invite someone into the mission and they can see themselves part of it, they're more likely to give to that need. So that's one story that I can think of. The other one is probably another Simon, but in a different diocese, Father Simon's story in the Diocese of Palmerston North, where our Bishop John Adams is now. He has come a long way in his parish, and we think and talk about a parishioner there who was the first person to contact DR, just a lay woman on fire for her faith, contacting the ministry saying, listen, I want to get DR in the parish. What can I do? What can I do? And a lot of our responses around prayer, just pray for your parish priest, come alongside him, offer your support. Very important thing to do. But where he's come from to where he is now is just incredible, to the point where they just the Sunday past just had a Vision Sunday. So they consolidated all their masses down to one Sunday, and they invited Bishop John to come and speak, and they had a lunch and they had presentation, they had a panel discussion, and they really just shared the vision that they have for the parish. They've done an evaluation in the parish, and they're going to be doing their first open house later in 2024. So when I kind of step back and I see the trajectory of where they came from that one woman just saying, I want DR in my parish, what can I do? To now where Father Simon is, he's just on fire. And when I said to him, we were having a chat, and I said, what's one thing that you can see in your parish that's happened that's got you to where you're at? And he said, coming to the conference with a handful of my leaders, just switched us up a gear, and the joy in his face and the fruit that he's seeing is just so exciting. Yeah, I love it. It's so great to hear these stories.
That's amazing. Excuse me. I love hearing, like you're saying, like the trajectory, especially how that story started with a woman saying, I feel this, and you say, pray. It's not like go against, go behind, figure out how to force something through. It's like we have so much power in prayer that like action is sitting right there in front of us because we just need to get on our knees. What would you say to encourage a priest or a parish leader or a woman like that woman, or, a member of the laity, as we are in Advent, in a season of longing, but also hope, if they wanted their parish to experience that, if they had that longing, but it's just not happening?
I think that place you touch on, Jacqueline, there's a lot of pain in that place for people. And I think the recognition of that call to prayer can be somewhat frustrating for a lot of people. But I would always go back to that, we have a great resource. It's the Rosary, Parish Renewal Rosary that Father James wrote. And I think for a lot of people in that situation, that's where I'd always go to. And that would be my advice to priests as well. Find the people in your parish who are prayers. Find the ones who are devoted. Maybe they're devotional. Maybe they're the ones that turn up to weekday mass, or they join together to pray a rosary, and just get them to pray for this one thing, for revival and renewal in your parish. Just find who they are, and invite them, invite them to come together just to pray. That would probably be my one thing. It takes a lot of patience, but I think in that place, the Lord, and there's a season of fallow sometimes, where you don't see what the fruit is, but He's doing great work underneath, and the Holy Spirit has a plan. He goes ahead of us. So the coming to prayer, gathering the prayers together, whatever that looks like, there's a lot of hope in that space.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, all the way from Scotland, New Zealand, Australasia.
Scotland,
Divine.
New Zealand.
Yeah, no. I was going to say New Zealand Divine Renovation.
You managed to hit multiple
Guide.
territories by getting by inviting Cheryl. Well done.
Scotland, New Zealand, Africa, a whole continent. No. Anyhow, but thank you for joining us, and I really hope that you have a wonderful Christmas season with your family in Scotland.
Thank you so much. Bless you guys.
Welcome to the podcast, Matt. It's so great for you to be here, man.
I am so honored to join the two of you, especially after listening the last few weeks. It's like the legend is building.
So look, we have a few questions that we wanted to ask you to get us going, but I want to ask a question that's not on the list because Jacqueline created the list and she missed an important one.
How rude.
So here's my question for you, Matt. Can you give us your best Santa impression?
Well, okay. So Santa in Texas, he doesn't wear really warm clothes, right? He wears like cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. So I would say, I haven't heard it in a while. My children are older, so it happens more quietly now. But when he flies overhead and he lands on your house, he says, "Merry Christmas, y'all."
There you go. Love it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I do have a question that was on the list to ask you, but I want to be like Dan and I want to ask off base one, because here's the thing is that for our listeners, we have this global team that we've talked about where we often meet virtually, which allows us to be in connection while we're in all these different countries. And so for our kind of online staff Christmas party, Matt is going to be hosting. And Matt, I haven't told you this yet, but in my head the whole time I was like, oh my gosh, what if he dresses up as Saint Nick? That would be so good. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm just dropping
cowboy boots and a beard and a y'all.
So my actual question is, what is your favorite Christmas tradition?
Well, okay. So I would say we live in a traditional Catholic family, but we don't. Well, let me rephrase this. My side of the family does not have a lot of traditions, but my wife's side is like you do something one time in a row and it's a tradition. And I remember when I was dating her and invited to Christmas to come to her family's Christmas, I was told what dish to bring and how to cook it. So that's the kind of family I joined, right? When she finally came to do like Thanksgiving or Christmas with my family, I think one year we were at a Hard Rock Cafe in Orlando, Florida, and it was like against every fiber of her being, right? So I challenged it greatly. But I do remember now together, our favorite Christmas tradition is we make something called Sticky Jeff. And this is a yeast roll. I would be more like a sweet roll or a breakfast roll. What would you call those? Like a cinnamon roll kind of thing.
Yeah.
And my family makes an assembly line. We make dozens of these, and we go through and we put the rolls in, then you put the sugar and the walnuts and all the things, and then we package them up and we bring them to people's houses, and they leave them out the night before Christmas. When they wake up Christmas morning, the yeast rolls have risen. They pop it in the oven for 18 minutes, and it is Texas deliciousness. Like, it makes you friends for life, and it's very cheap. So it's the best thing to give people to make sure they're your friends every holiday.
Do you have a recipe for this? Because we'll put it in the show notes.
We do. I'm going to put it in the show notes. It's awesome.
That's awesome. Sticky Jeff. So it's funny. So my family, we until very recently, COVID really, we used to make exactly that. Only I don't know what we call it, but we'd make those buns, rolls. It was but we'd bake them, and in the morning we would deliver them hot. But the great limiting factor is how much can you fit in your stove? Because I could tell you, is not much that fits in my stove. You have broken through the scaling potential of this Christmas.
The multiplication model.
It is a multiplication model. I love it. Oh man. So look, it's not talking about multiplication. I want you to reflect a little bit on your year. I mean, you get to be in a coaching relationship with so many priests and leaders around the world in different places. So if you look back over this year, Matt, what are some of your what's this year look like for you? What are some of your takeaways from this past year?
It's so interesting. When I started doing coaching with Divine Renovation, I was part of a parish that was being coached. I'd known for a long time that I wanted to be in some sort of coaching role years ago, even watching a friend of mine do this for parish leaders, even before it was like a thing. I knew I wanted to do it. And then when I joined the ministry 2 weeks before the pandemic and everything went online anyway, it just felt like, well, is this the way? You're just going to coach everybody on Zoom and that's going to be how it works. By the way, Zoom coaching is awesome. I've seen priests make amazing shifts and amazing progress just in Zoom. But I would say that when the world started to open up a little bit again, and it started to be this mix of like going and meeting with teams in person, or helping facilitate like a staff retreat with their parish leaders, or being part of a leadership summit, or meeting some of these priests that I'd never met in person at an Unlocked event in the US, or like the big DRUSA conference, or over in the UK. Meeting them in person isn't just a good bonus. meeting them in person deepened the relationship and the trust in such a way that I think it just catapulted what was possible, even in our Zoom coaching. So I'd say looking back on this year, it's been that great mix of in-person and Zoom, coaching new parishes, new pastors, new leaders, meeting new leaders, and accompanying some that we've accompanied since the early days of Divine Renovation. All in a day's work, right? That's what it seems like sometimes. And that was just Tuesday, you know?
Oh, I love that so much. That makes me want to push you for, this is a hard question. What is like a story? Like narrow it down to a single story that's going to stand out to you from this past year.
Yeah, there's so many. I'll tell you one that really, really resonates. And this is not one that I had a whole lot of interaction with in person. But this parish, been on the journey for a few years. Actually, I was this priest's Kickstart coach. Then he did Traction, and I was his coach again. And so after Traction, he was invited into one-to-one, and I was his one-to-one coach. So that doesn't always happen. That was just the way this worked. But I'd known him for a long time. And he's put a team together, and this is a country where they don't have a lot of staff. So he might have one staff member, and that staff member is more like parish secretary, which is a normal reality in most parts of the world. So he put this staff together, and they were doing some incredible things. They were doing Alpha. They were casting great vision. He was learning how to lead out of the team, which takes some, work, and it takes some getting used to for these parish leaders that might have always had to do everything on their own. And then they hit a snag. Imagine that, they hit a snag. And the snag was a toxic member of their leadership team who was also another priest. And so just that challenge, it's not like everything had to get paused, but this is like a hierarchy of needs thing. If they're not healthy and they're not able to find joy in what they're doing, and they don't feel well supported or like they can do it, everything grinds to a stop. And you've got to address that issue first, right? And that's exactly the season we found ourselves in. They weren't getting a whole lot of support from the diocese. The priest that was having some personality conflicts there was reassigned, but wasn't leaving anytime soon. People in the community were picking sides. Even this, I'll tell you this, that the pastor I was supporting questioned his own leadership and priesthood that season.
Wow.
Like, should I go to the bishop and say, you need to reassign me? But for him to trust me, not just as like, hey, let me show you how to lead out of the team in a healthy way. It was like, no, we're going to actually figure this out together. Yeah. He had an advocate. He had someone he could come to talk to be challenged by, to be supported and loved by, and to figure this out with another thought partner in the room. His team's turned a corner. Actually, I finally got to meet them in person. One of them came to Houston and we went to Mass together. They brought me this beautiful piece of artwork where it shows everybody rowing in the same direction. And they said, this has been an image for us. And they said, you've helped us get there because you've been in the boat with us. And we want you to hang this somewhere in your office. And I wish I could show you because it hangs directly above my desk right now. Everybody rowing in the same direction. They're getting there again. But that's why this parish renewal stuff that we talk about, it's not just change management. It's not just go through the steps. It's even those that are bought in and doing it, the things you have to revisit and reprioritize. And when you hit a snag, or in this case, almost felt like a sinking ship, how we can be there for them in those moments.
I love that. So Matt, maybe when you think of the priests out there who want change and they want to experience sort of the blessings of parish renewal, what hope would you give them?
Yeah, I think so many priests inherit a lot of things they don't know they're specifically supposed to question. When they become a priest, a pastor, a parish priest at a church, they come into an existing structure, existing practices, and they themselves have a lived experience of leadership, especially if they've been a pastor or a parish priest already. But they come in and they don't know that things don't have to be that way. So a lot of times when they think about parish renewal, or they think about like, can I make incremental changes? Could I start to think about renewal? Could I think about missionary discipleship in the midst of all this other stuff I have going on? And the question is yes, because I hope that they see that they don't have to keep doing all the things they've been doing and think about parish renewal. Now, in a sense, there's a lot they do have to keep doing. I get that. They don't get to pause everything they're doing and just focus on all the things that are fun and exciting and are changing lives. Sometimes they got to swim in both pools for a while. But I think a lot of times if they just realize, hey, you don't have to do things the way you've always done them. You don't have to do things just because they've always been done that way at that church. And then the final piece of hope is you don't and shouldn't have to do it alone. And that doesn't just mean with all of the usual suspects that you were told by the guy that was there before you. These are the guys guys and gals you need to turn to raise up new leaders, to talk to new people about what's possible, to talk to a ministry like Divine Renovation, like to talk to us about what's possible. And here's the thing I like is when people reach out to me, how many times I'm connecting one pastor with another pastor. Like, you know what, Father so-and-so, your story sounds a lot like Father so-and-so over here. Would you like to connect with them and see what they thought when they first started or what they did when they were in the same situation you were in? So we're not just the experts, right? We're living it out too, but we're connecting them with the other people in the trenches that are doing this very same thing all around the world.
I love this. What I am hearing is like, you don't have to do this alone. We're in the boat with you, which I just love that image. And what a great way to like give people hope right in the midst of Advent. So yeah, thank you, Matt. Like, this is a delight. I know that we had to just like rush in here and say, tell us your whole year. And so we could probably talk for like another, like we could have a whole season of just stories from the field, stories from the trenches. Why am I saying the field?
Well, and you're doing that in a sense, right? I mean, most of the podcasts that you guys are doing already, sharing stories of these parishes that are experiencing renewal, those are the same ones we get to tell, but right now you've given them a platform to tell the story themselves.
Yeah. And we're blessed with so many stories and also not quite enough Santa impressions. I can't wait to see your best version of it at the staff Christmas party this year. Just leaving it out there.
I love it. I love it.
All right, Matt, thanks so much for being with us, man. I can't wait to see you in your Santa costume at the staff Christmas party.
I can't wait either. And just to clarify, it will be Saint Nick. I just want everybody to know ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
Saint Nick.
Saint Nick.
Good.
As Catholic as shit, man. Yeah.
Yes. Hooray. I'm so glad that we had all three of them on today. That's like, it's really fun to me to interview people that, are priests and parish leaders with us, but it's super fun to interview people from our team.
Yeah, we get to work with alongside some very, very cool people.
Yeah. And also I am always amazed, even though, we're in meetings and things with them all the time, what I still don't know. Like, with Cheryl, I didn't know one of those stories. And with Matt, I'm learning something new. And I did know Father James was competitive, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't realize how competitive.
Oh, I'm still wounded. I'm still wounded by the trivia questions. I want to redo. Yeah. A lot of liturgical questions.
I know, that's why I
Now,
threw
some
the
of those
F1
I knew.
in.
But yeah, the F1 one was the only chance I had.
And I also didn't know what a big race would be called with F1. So I was like, the grand final, the big
fine.
race. I love it. Yeah, so that was super exciting to me. Although we didn't get a chance to just check in with each other. So I'm curious, what is the best Christmas present you've ever gotten?
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's a tough question to answer. The best Christmas present I've ever gotten. Oh, I'm fumbling about here. So I don't know. But let me reflect on maybe some of the finer Christmas gifts I've ever received, which isn't necessarily the best. So I'll alleviate the pressure of identifying the single one. Look, I think gifts of the heart are the ones that often have the most lasting meaning. I can think when I was a kid, I always asked for a given toy or video game or whatever it happened to be. At one point it was CDs, Jacqueline. I asked for a lot of CDs.
I get it. I totally
get it. Now I'm just old. So I think those things, but like if you asked me what those games were, what the music CDs were, I'd be at a complete loss to tell you. I think it's the stuff that came from the heart, sometimes crafts. And I think probably the most, and you're, as a mom, you might understand this well. It's like, the terrible little crafts that my kids make.
Yes.
Those are probably the ones that matter the most,
Totally.
Now, I'll be honest, I don't keep all of those, but I do keep photos of all of them. Long ago, I learned the trick of take pictures of the art, because not everything's going to fit on the fridge. And after a little while, you're kind of sick of looking at it. It's the same for some of the things that I might have received, everything from Christmas ornaments made by our kids to other little knickknacks. And so for me, it would be in that vein of things. But what about you, Jack? What would be a favorite Christmas
Well, I
gift?
really like diamonds. No. Yeah, it's a good question for me too. Growing up, I had horses, which I realize is a very privileged position. I grew up on a little farm in a small town, and so usually it was anything to do with my horse, or my whole life revolved around my horse. I actually used to give my horse and my pony stockings, and I'd hang them in front of their manger, and then I would sneak out in the middle of the night and put carrots and apples in, and then go in the morning as if they had known the whole night it was there, and then give it to them. But one year, my grandpa bought me this little wind up, what do you call it? Like a music player. Do you know what I mean? Like you wind it and then it...
Like a music box?
Yeah, like a music box, but it was a carousel with horses on it. And so you wound it up and then the horses went around in a circle. And, now it's not like that would be an actually valuable thing, but to preteen me, it was beautiful. And there was fake gems on it. And so it spoke to me that he saw me as someone not only worthy of that, but that there was something in me that was like that. And so he knew my loves, he knew the horses, he knew that I loved things that were pretty. And so it was actually quite affirming of who my grandfather saw me as. So that, I think, was probably my favorite Christmas present. Although you're right, the getting things from William is a delight as well.
All he needs to do is give you a diamond in the shape of a horse, and he will have won your love forever.
That's all it takes. It's just a diamond that's about 50 carats. No, no, he is amazingly sweet though, where he'll there's actually this wedding dress shop on the way home. And of course it has a really beautiful window display all the time. So he doesn't know it's wedding dresses. He just knows they're very fancy and everything's lit up in there. And ever since he was 4, he'd always say to me, "Mama, for your birthday, I'm going to get you one of those dresses." And I was with what money? He thinks we're just gonna walk in and be we need a ball gown so that we can sit at home and watch some Christmas shows. But I do think it's a delightful part of his little spirit. So all that to say, this brings us to the close of today's episode, which is actually the close of this episode this fall. So today is
the season.
The
close of the episode and the close of the season.
Did I say episode and episode?
Yeah, just twice.
It's really closing, in case you guys didn't get the point, listeners. So I want to thank everyone that has been journeying with us, especially for all of our guests where we're hearing these amazing stories the whole season, and for people that get to share that with us by listening in, that are supporting the ministry through prayers, as donors, as people that we are accompanying as they are in their parishes, bringing change. And so I'm really grateful for what we've been able to do here together, and for you that we got to do this together. I'm grateful for you, Dan.
Oh, for me? Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm grateful for you, but I can't wait to see what stories we hear next year so that we can continue to tell sort of the stories of what God's doing through his church.
I love it. Well, Merry Christmas to everyone. And for the sticklers, Happy Advent and then Merry Christmas.